Yo, yo, yo. I thought I set the countdown, but no countdown. We are live. How are you all doing? I am Gabriel Pickup, joined by my fantastic co host, Donovan Gibbs. Adam decided to be selfish and go on a flight during this show. No, I'm just kidding. I
I
know.
can't blame him. The government didn't let him get
Yeah,
back get back home yet.
hey, I was flying just fine in that shutdown, but I did feel bad for everyone because the morale was a little bit down. But you know where the morale is not down? Right here on this show. If you like the show, make sure you like and subscribe. Tell a friend, whatever you would be happy to do. I am more than appreciative, and so is Donovan. And with that being said, we have a special edition for this show. The edition is, of course, we're going to go over Ohio State in a little bit. But I think to start things out, we're doing a segment here for superlatives for the season. Now, the season's not quite over, but at this point, we know sort of how the direction of the season has gone for better or for worse. So, with that being said, let's take away some positives. And I wrote down MVP first, but I think we should probably save that for one of the later things just because that's like the big award. So, let's get into some we did freshman of the year, sophomore of the year, junior of the year, senior of the year. Let's start out with freshman.
All right, for freshmen, it's tough because in Greg Schiano's system, for the most part, how you doing, Jason? Thank you for coming in to spend this time with us while we break down Rutgers football for the season. A lot of freshmen did not really make an appearance this year outside of a couple in regards to whether it's later in games or if they're on the special team unit. But two freshmen that I had my eye on so far this year was the 4-star linebacker duo of Kamar Archie and DJ McClary. Those two have been in the opportunities that they've had so far this year. For Kamar Archie, 3 tackles against Oregon, and for McClary, 3 tackles in his debut against North Florida State, 1 tackle against Oregon. And despite them not really getting a lot of opportunities in Rutgers or on the field this year for Rutgers, is due to how much veterans are on this defense, especially in that linebacking core. They did get a lot of transfers for that front seven. They were able to make opportunities of what they were able to do so far this year, and they made the most of it. And for Greg Schiano, that's going to be something that he keeps his eye on going into spring ball and going into next season.
Yeah, those are good picks. Now you're right. We did have a small sample size this year, and we usually do with Coach Shiano. I went with AJ Soris rather, only because he was only out there for 9 attempts, but he started off 0 for 3, and then he warmed up and got 2 touchdowns. Hit Michael Thomas III, fellow freshman, for his only catch and touchdown of his career so far. So that's my pick. I know it was in garbage time, but he looked nice out there, and he also looked good in the spring game before the season started. So I take that into account too, because that's really the only other part of the sample size we have. So now we go on to sophomore of the year, and I kind of have a cop out answer for this. It's my only co-award, but I'll let you go first because I know you have a solid answer for this one.
My answer, because you could go either way on whether it's on the offensive side or the defensive side. I went on the offensive side, and I chose KJ Duff primarily because one 2025 Biletnikoff Award watch list alongside Ian Strong and DT Sheffield. But out of all the three, you can make a case that KJ has been the most productive receiver for this Rutgers offense this season. 51 catches for 854 yards this year, 94 yards per game receiving, third in yards, fourth in receptions per game, fifth in receiving yards per game in the Big Ten. And this is a Big Ten that includes not only the duo of Cornell Tate and Jeremiah Smith, you also have to include Makai Lemon from USC as well as Denzel Boston from Washington. So KJ Dubb being top 5, let alone top 3 on those in those categories and receiving, with how strong and just how the big names that are involved in regards to the wide receivers that the Big Ten have had this year, is very, very impressive for a sophomore who's, for the most part, didn't really get the chance to show off his abilities until the Guaranteed Rate Bowl last year against Kansas State. So that's why I have him for sophomore of the year. And Not only his 251-yard, 1 touchdown on 6 receptions, may I add, against Purdue, beyond being the 6th 200-yard receiving game in Rutgers history, it was also the second most yards in a game in Rutgers history for a single game. So
Yeah, and
easily it's my sophomore year.
yeah, I believe the first one, number one, was in 2014, and his name is escaping me at the moment. My co-award winners for that, obviously, I went with KJ Duff too, and I went with Antoine Raymond. I'm sure you could have guessed that he would have been my other sophomore of the year candidate. And I know what they say about splitting awards, but it's happened. It's happened in NBA. It's happened in the NFL. So I get one. All right. I'm not gonna do this all the time. I get the one though. And with Antoine Raymond, his numbers are very symmetrical, very OCD friendly. He has exactly 200 attempts, exactly 1,000 yards, and 11 touchdowns. And he also has 15 for 163 catching the ball and a touchdown. Notable games, obviously, 2 weeks ago or 1.5 weeks ago against Maryland, 240 yards on 41 attempts, both career highs. And I expect that both will be the most rushing yards and rushing attempts for a Rutgers running back for a long time. Obviously, there have been prior performances, but this will be the mark for a long time. And he had the 1 touchdown, and then he had 29 attempts, 116 in a touchdown against Purdue, and 26 attempts for 160 yards, 2 touchdowns. And he had a stretch here of 4 straight games with 2 rushing touchdowns, from Miami of Ohio on September 6th to Minnesota, September 27th. So I couldn't really decide. Both of them have been super dominant, and it's seasons that I don't want to be cast away just because of our record or because we've lost disappointing games. So with that being said, we got junior of the year. And yeah, you got it. Go ahead.
For junior of the year, I had to go for the defensive side, and a linebacker, one of the veteran linebackers, Darrell DeJambe, 41 total tackles on the season, 2 forced fumbles as well. He's been one of the few players on this Rutgers defense that's been able to get the ball free and be able to cause game-changing turnovers. And his best game so far this year against Iowa, he looked like one of the better linebackers out there, and this is against an Iowa team that's known for having very good linebackers. He had 8 total tackles, 2 solo, 6 assisted. So him being that junior, he's easily junior of the year in my opinion, just not only off the defensive end but in general.
All right, well, we have a little bit of a disagreement here, and Jabome has had a solid year, but if we're going based off projections, he has played every game this year, and he has a little over half of the total tackles that he had last year, less than half tackles for loss, 2.5 less sacks, same amount of fumbles, no pass deflections, only 1 last year. But he's had a good year. But I would say the junior of the year is Ian Strong for me, just because of the fact that, he got his draft stock up from maybe not even being drafted to, he's been as high as, I believe, pick 26 in projected drafts that I've seen. And the only reason why I didn't have him for offensive player of the, well, I guess that's a spoiler for offensive player of the year. The only reason I didn't have him is because he missed 2 games or 2.5 games, I guess. But he, when playing, has been Rutgers' #1 option on offense. And I had to give it to Ian. But if there's something that in your minds sort of separated Jabome from Ian, I'd like to hear it, though.
What I separated from those two has been just he's been one of the few bright spots for Rutgers' defense, especially on a front seven that has been having a lot of struggles against stopping the run. And he's been their best tackler for the most part. The other two when it comes to top 3 tackles, the first 2 are DBs. So being top 3 in tackles as a linebacker when you're supposed to be #1 in that spot, he's been one of the few bright spots on that front seven. That's why I had to give him that award. Because you're 100% with Ian. I have him for my offensive player of the year, even despite him missing 2 games. Because as we see with how Rutgers' offense has been, Ethan has felt so much more comfortable when he's able to have options, and one of those options being Ian Strong. And he's easily been one of the best wide receivers, not only in the Big Ten, but one of the best wide receivers for Ethan throughout his entire career, to be completely honest.
Yeah, both Strong and Duff have been 2 of the best wide receivers in college football altogether this year, and it's great to see. And that is fair. You do have to show some love to the defense on a unit that has underperformed, but there have been diamonds in the rough. Unfortunately, I don't have any defensive players. Oh, no, I have one defensive player listed, but ironically, it's for defensive player of the year. So, but I will get into offensive and defensive in a second. Senior of the year, I'll go first for this one. There were a couple nominees, but, there was Gus Zelinskas, who outside of one bad snap has been probably our best offensive lineman this year, and helped the run game, helped Antoine attack the middle. And defensively, Eric O'Neill was a possible candidate. But for me, I had to give it to Ethan. DT has had a solid year too. Not the superstar year you'd expect, but he has been he has shown flashes of dominance. But for me, it's got to be Ethan. I mean, the guy's got career highs in passing yards, completion percentage, yards per pass. He needs just 2 touchdown passes in his next 2 games to surpass last year's career high in touchdown passes, career high in quarterback rating. He came up clutch against Purdue, against Washington, against Iowa, against Maryland, against Miami of Ohio. He has 3 350-yard passing performances, including, or not 350, 300, and including a 387 performance against Washington that doesn't really get talked about just because we lost by, I believe, 19 points. So, I want to give Ethan love because Rutgers was very hard on him last year, even though he had a solid year, but he's really taken that step up, and he's been a true leader for us.
For me, I decided to go with Gus Zelinskas because he's been one of the better centers in the nation so far. Outside of one bad snap against Minnesota, you can say he's been a literal shield out there for Ethan, and he's been one of the primary reasons why Ethan has been able to be so successful. He's been able to keep Ethan upright. He's been one of the few offensive linemen on Rutgers' offense to not really give up a sack or a pressure outside of the Oregon game. And seeing how Rutgers has dealt with plenty of injuries, especially at that tackle spot so far this year, and we've had to see so many different offensive line lineups so far this season. Being able to have Gus Zelinskas to be that glue guy to keep everybody on the same page is a very, very impressive and just something as a center that I personally have to tip my hat off to, because that makes the job of a center 10 times harder, being able to have to keep a second team guy or a third team guy on the same pace as everybody else, seeing how the next man up especially has been primarily on that Rutgers offensive line. So that's why I have Gus Zelinskas as my senior of the year, because he's been the senior to keep everybody on the same page, and he's been a big time leader for that Rutgers offense.
Yeah, and if you noticed, when Ethan drops back, the pocket collapses, but the middle always stays open. I mean, that's why he's able to get out of there and do his little duck waddle, get a few yards when you think that it's a for sure sack. And you're right. It doesn't help that Tyler Needham, Mashoud Giwa, and Taj White have sort of been carouseling around that left tackle position all year. And obviously, we've had other injuries on the front line too. But it was so early on that I don't consider that part of the carousel. But Gus Zelinskas definitely gets his flowers. Definitely one of the better Scarlet Knight linemen I can remember watching. We had Holland Pierce last year, who I would put in that same conversation. But Gus Zelinskas, best center I can remember. So we went through all the classmen of the year. Let's do offensive player of the year. So who's your offensive player of the year?
I've mentioned it, Ian Strong, because yes, he did miss 2 games, but he's easily been one of the better receivers so far in the Big Ten. And a lot of people going into this year was thinking, how well is DT Sheffield going to be going from North Texas to another passing offense in Rutgers? But it feels like Ian Strong has easily stole the show, despite all 3 of them, him, KJ Duff, and DT Sheffield all getting the attention that they well deserved. It seems that Ian Strong has been that wide receiver that when in doubt, he's going to be able to make that play. We've seen it time and time again. We've seen KJ Duff be able to have his better games because all that attention primarily has been on Ian Strong and DT Sheffield on the outside. Ian has showed that he is a valuable wide receiver 1 on this offense, and we've seen during those 2 games where he wasn't playing, that offense was really stagnating at certain parts of the game, especially in the passing game. And when he came back, it felt like nothing changed. It felt like uh the same Rutgers offense that we seen before he left, and we saw Ethan be able to be more comfortable. And a lot of those 300-yard performances or 250-plus-yard performances have been with Ian Strong being on the field. I look at the Illinois game, I look at the Purdue game, and I primarily look at the Maryland game just last week, where we saw Ian Strong be able to break out and take advantage of the one-on-one matchups on the outside. He's been one of the few receivers for Rutgers that can get off of press coverage and be the strong hands and being able to make a bunch of amazing catches on the sideline, and the ability to make a man miss and have that ability of getting yards after the catch. All those traits have shown why he's been so valuable for Rutgers, and Ethan has to honestly has to contribute a lot of his success so far in the passing game to Ian Strong so far this season.
Yeah, for sure. And he does have to. I'm really curious to see Strong's pro evaluations. Yeah, I don't know if he comes back. I know Adam thinks that he could come back, as long as he doesn't transfer. I mean, it's if he's either here or declaring for the draft, I'm happy, because one is his own dreams coming true, and one is Scarlet Knights fans' dreams coming true. As for a guy that we need to bring back next year, I'm going for his counterpart, his teammate in high school. Offensive Player of the Year to me is KJ Duff. Now, I, just like you, dedicated this to the NFL route and awarded the Offensive Player of the Year to a non-quarterback, because MVP in the NFL has basically been a quarterback award. So they decided,
unfortunately,
hey, this year you can argue Jonathan Taylor. Last year you can argue Saquon. Year before CMC, but whatever. It happens. You could have argued Jamar Chase last year, same thing. But KJ Duff to me is the Offensive Player of the Year, and it was definitely a four-man race between him, Strong, Ethan, and Raymond. But like I said about the quarterback award, and also because to me, KJ has been a little more consistent. His role has always been wide receiver 1A or 1B, depending on how you flip the coin, whatever week it is. He only had 2 catches last week, but it was still for 69 yards. The least amount of receiving yards he had in the game was 41 against Oregon, where the offense was taken out with a quarter left. But every other game, he has had at least 3 catches for 60 or more yards. He had a stretch where, to start the year, actually, which you think of Ian Strong, you think of the Illinois game, you obviously think of Purdue, but he had a stretch to start the year where he had 5 catches, 6 catches, 6 catches, 7 catches, 6 catches for 54, 71, 119, 92, and 84. So he's been consistent all year. And I think that part of the reason why he didn't really do as dominant against Maryland is because he was coming off the 6 for 241 and the 9 for 93. And they realized that he was the primary option. And obviously Ian Strong made them pay. I'm not mad at Ian Strong for being your Offensive Player of the Year, though. Both of them have been dominant. It's just, to me, the total numbers, the consistency, and also KJ Duff getting 53 catches on 17 and a half yards per catch, 6 touchdowns. He's having a monster year. He's only a sophomore, and I pray that we bring him back, because he's going to get a lot of offers.
He's going to be the top, one of the top wide receiver recruits in the portal this year, if he even thinks about considering it. And for this offense, they need to keep KJ. He needs to keep KJ, especially with.
Are the two.
I hopefully see him staying and being able to stay loyal with the team that gave him that first opportunity. But if he is going to leave in the portal, I completely understand. There's so many teams right now are looking for that type of size out of a wide receiver, because he is kind of what the NFL prototype a lot of NFL scouts are going to be looking for at wide receiver.
The CeeDee Lambs, the Juju Smith-Schusters, you can go on with that. Oh, man. I think that him coming back is very much not dependent, but it could very much correlate on what Ian Strong does. Because, like I said, they went to high school together. They've known each other for probably since Sandbox days. They might be, I'm not certain on this, I can't confirm, but I can imagine they might be rooming together at school. But if Ian Strong declares for the draft, there's your number one recruit in keeping KJ around. He is from New York, and the closest school for Riverhead, New York, that is D1 FBS is Rutgers. Syracuse is miles away, so hopefully that is enough for him to stay around. But if it's based on money, someone's going to give him a bigger bid. So we got to hope that he's loyal. And if he's not, like you said, you can't blame him. So let's see. That was Offensive Player of the Year. Now for Defensive Player of the Year, I actually had it as Eric O'Neal before the show started, but I had a change of heart, and that's with all due respect to Mr. O'Neal. He's had an incredible stretch of late, including a 10 combined tackle performance against Maryland, 7 individual, but he had half of his season stats basically last week, so I can't go too much on recency bias. I'm actually going with Bo Masco. He's basically been our CB1 this year, and as a sophomore too, he really did take that step, and I was between, like I said, him and Eric O'Neal, and I would show love to Jet Elad too, but to me, Jet got burnt a little too much on pass coverage, especially in the first half of the year. I was really high on Cam Miller, and he's had a few good weeks too, but in total, I don't think he was quite Defensive Player of the Year for Rutgers. So I'm giving it to Bo. He had a key interception week 2 when Miami of Ohio was on upset alert against us. They were down 4 points in field goal range towards the end zone, and he took it 68 yards. Now, he also has 38 total tackles, which for a corner is insane, and 2 tackles for loss, which means that when he was blitzing, he was getting the running backs when there wasn't really too much of a running back defense this year. Let me correct that. There was a running back defense. There wasn't too much of a quarterback scrambling defense. So to me, on a defense with not too many bright spots, he did shine the brightest.
I completely understand that in regards to Bo Masco. He's been one of the few bright spots in that secondary. But I actually did choose Jet Elad for my Defensive Player of the Year because he's been one of the few players on that Rutgers defense that's been able to cause turnovers, and that's been one of the rarities for Rutgers defense this year. And when Rutgers is able to cause turnovers, we've seen slight amounts of success. And I look back to how great he's been playing so far this year. Overall, 59 tackles on the season, and he's been able to force 1 fumble, 2 interceptions so far this year. I think that leads the team I think that does lead the team as we speak right now. So he's been one of the few game changers in that secondary unit. And yes, he has seen situations where he's been burnt. I look back at the Minnesota game and as well as the Iowa game, the touchdown in the third quarter that really did change a lot of the momentum for the Rutgers defense finishing off that game. Because in the first half, they looked like the more physical unit against Iowa, to be completely honest, despite the high scoring. They still looked like they were more of the stronger teams, and if they were able to go into second half with a couple of key adjustments, it looked like a game that they were going to be able to win. But so far this year, Jet Elad has been one of the few bright spots for that defense. This when it comes to being a run fitter, when it comes to going into pass coverage, I definitely look at Jet Elad as one of the few spots where that safety position, especially in a Big Ten that's known for being heavily in the passing game, he still has that element of being able to come down and fit the run. So Jet Elad easily for me is my Defensive Player of the Year, but it was a tough 1A, 1B because Bo Masco, I was looking at both of their seasons in comparison. You could make the case for either or.
Yeah, you could. And I understand your argument because on a defense that doesn't force punts, the best defense you can do is turn the ball over. So that's a valid argument. And I sort of was mixed on this next award because it's sort of what's the word? It's sort of I forget what the word is, but basically it can go a number of directions. I'll think of it after the show ends, of course. But most unexpected leap for me, it was Antoine Raymond because he came into the year as running back 1B, and he unfortunately did have to be running back number 1, not even 1A, just the workhorse guy. And I went over his OCD friendly numbers, but yeah, Antoine Raymond, sophomore coming into the year, he was 1B. CJ Campbell gets hurt for the year. CJ Campbell could possibly be back next year too, so that would be pretty cool. if he decided to forego. Well, it would be tough to go into the NFL draft after being injured all year. But
Yeah,
anyways,
especially after missing a whole year full of injuries, he has to stay another year.
yeah, exactly, because he's coming from FAU, and this is his chance in the Big Ten to shine. But I'm saying Antoine Raymond, unexpected leap, just from a pure workhorse standpoint, being consistent, and the fact that when there were games where Ethan wasn't necessarily an A quarterback, and they started feeding Raymond, and all of a sudden the offense opened up a lot more. I think back to I forget which team it was, maybe Washington, where it was third and like 17 or something in field goal range. They give it to Antoine Raymond just to try to get closer for a field goal, and he takes it 25 yards for a first down, first and goal.
Yeah, that was the Washington game.
Yeah, he's done that a number of games, and so to me, it's Antoine Raymond. I thought even when C.J. Campbell got hurt, it would be sort of like a Raymond, Jashawn Benjamin 1A, 1B situation, but no, Shiano gave him the Monangai treatment, and I think he's earned it.
100%. That's where I have him as well for most unexpectedly, because going into the year, we thought C.J. Campbell and Antoine Wayman were going to be Kyle Monangai by committee. And we saw C.J. Campbell being able to bring the power of Monangai, while Antoine Raymond had that breakaway speed that Monangai has shown so far in his NFL career. And since the injury in, I think, week 3, we've really seen Antoine Raymond completely take over. 18 carries against Iowa, 26 carries against Minnesota, 15 against Washington, another 18 against Oregon, 29 against Purdue, 41 just last week against Maryland for 240 yards. And he right now, as the season species, a 1,000-yard rusher. And I'm excited for potentially next year to see what could be of Antoine Raymond and C.J. Campbell, because it was destined for those two to be able to split carries and be able to show the dominance in the running game for this Rutgers offense. And despite Jashawn Benjamin not being able to take that next step to be that complimentary back, we've really seen Antoine Raymond show that he has the potential of being an RB1. And it's going to be interesting going into next year of who really is going to be the running back that gets primarily most of the carries, because we are going to see a 51-49 split in regards to carries, but I truly believe the 51 should go to Antoine Raymond, because so far this year we've seen him being able to show off that speed and power that we've seen from Monangai throughout his career at Rutgers. And I'm not saying Raymond is Monangai, but being able to go from a running back Monangai that's had 1,000 yards religiously throughout his time at Rutgers to being able to put up 1,000 yards in the season in a year where you were supposed to be that second running back is very, very impressive. Coming off of a year just last year where he didn't even crack 500 yards.
Nope. And last year he was efficient, but this year he's looking like a star. And on 5 yards per carry, by the way, that's 200 attempts for 1,000 yards. That's a big sample size to be getting that. And by the way, the word I was
5.5 yards a carry in the Big Ten, knowing that this is becoming more and more of the conference where defenses are becoming more elite, is very, very impressive, especially going up against good run defenses such as Oregon, such as Iowa, and coming up this week against Ohio State, which has been one of the best run defenses in the nation. If Antoine Raymond is able to just do half of what he did against Maryland, it's going to be a huge boost for the Rutgers offense.
Yeah, and I'm going to take a look at, by the way, the word I was thinking of was subjective. That was the word that was escaping my mind. It's most unexpected leap is a very subjective award. So it's ironic that we both agree in it when this is probably the most opinionated award in terms of like the definition of what do you think is unexpected. So I actually wanted to say Antoine Raymond, I'm more confident that he comes back than Duff because of two reasons. One, he didn't come in here as a pairing with anybody. He came in here on his own accord. Now, Duff and Strong did come here because they were sold on the program, but they also came in here knowing each other and being really good friends. But number two is because of the running back legacy in the NFL. Now, we've had our share of good wide receivers too, obviously. You think of Sanu, you think of Britt, but there's been Monangai, he just had a 198 performance for a touchdown in his first game as a starter. and he's their 1B right now. He's Chicago Bears 1B running back.
Just
And
had a rushing touchdown just this Sunday as well.
that's 3 games in a row that he's had a rushing touchdown. And 4 games in a row, because I believe he had a rushing touchdown, his first rushing touchdown, and then he got the 198, he got the touchdown, and then back-to-back weeks he's been the power back. And he's small, but he is a power back, so that's a lot. That says a lot about Monangai, but that's also why I think that Raymond could stay, is because he has faith in Schiano being the coach to elevate him as a running back, looking with a goal for the NFL. I think that
coming from a running back tree that includes Monangai, Isaiah Pacheco, and now
and Ray Rice, obviously.
Yeah, seeing that Antoine Raymond does have the potential of doing just what those players did during their time at Rutgers, and seeing how Rutgers running backs typically are very successful in the NFL. Isaiah Pacheco has been literally the backbone for this Chiefs rushing attack for the last couple of years. And you can say he's been a primary reason why the Chiefs were able to get to the Super Bowl on multiple occasions, because his running performances in the playoffs, being a big bruiser type of back, is what a lot of successful teams need to have in the playoffs to thrive. And now, after seeing with Antoine Raymond, he's able to run between the tackles. Some of his best runs this year have been A-gap runs. So he's been able to, if he's able to take that next step next year and go from 1,000 yards to potentially 1,300 or 1,400 yards, the sky's the limit for him at Rutgers. And that's truly why I can see him coming back this year, because Schiano sees it. There's a reason why Jashawn Benjamin or Samuel Brown V started to get a decline in carries after week 3 when CJ Campbell got hurt, because we see everything from Antoine Raymond right now. Jashawn and Samuel were not able to produce.
Yeah, I was surprised that Samuel Brown, not the first, second, third, fourth, or fifth, or not the first, second, third, or fourth, but the fifth, actually didn't really get that many carries, because when he came back from injury, it looked like he was RB2. Then Schiano started giving that to Benjamin. But also because Brown is a senior, I thought that Schiano maybe would have trusted him a little bit more, because he's been here since not since the Monangai days, because that was literally a year ago, but since Monangai himself was an underclassman, Samuel Brown has been here. And also it's interesting too, because Raymond coming into the year was the power back to CJ Campbell being the hybrid receiving back. So it's interesting that he went from power back to hybrid back, and it worked out perfectly for him.
Yeah, so far this year, he has shown some ability in the pass game as well. 15 receptions so far in the year, and seeing that ability to be a hybrid back, especially at the Big Ten level as that running back one thing about coaches, once they find that the iron's hot, they don't touch it. And as we've seen with Antoine Raymond, he's been showing a lot of production so far this year, and you don't want to mess with that, especially for a running attack that needed to step up when CJ Campbell got hurt.
Yes. All right, now on to the biggest individual award you can get, and the most honorable, because it is coming from us here at the Voice of College Football Rutgers. I bestoweth upon for me, Ethan Kaliakmanis. I'm not sure for Donovan who he's got, but this is the MVP award. That's my guy. Coming into the year, he had seasons of 52, 53% completion percentages. This year, he's at 62. He had years of 14 touchdown passes and 18. He needs just 2 to surpass his 18 from last year. His average yards per attempt this year, 8.3. That's almost a first down per completion, or per passing attempt, by the way. His QBR, or his rating rather, 144.9. The only thing he regressed in was rushing yards, and that's because he was too busy slinging the rock. He wasn't thinking about getting his 2.5 yards per carry like last year, or his yard under PJ Fleck. And you look at individual performances. Coming off last week, he did get 2 interceptions, but he completed 65% of his passes, 4 touchdowns, a rating of 207, and 3 of those were, like we said, to Ian Strong for the hat trick. His worst game of the year, well, Oregon, but his worst competitive game of the year was Illinois, and he had 25 of 45, and he looked off during that, and he still got 253 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions, 110 rating. Purdue, he was a monster, 70% completion percentage, 359 yards. I mean, I can read numbers all day. Like I said about the Washington game, people forget about that because it was a little lopsided in the second half. But 31 of 53, 86, 2 touchdowns. And look, he is, I believe, second or third. I think second in even after the bye week in Big Ten passing yards. And he started the year after the first 3 games, which were the only 3 games against non-Big Ten competition. He was number 1 in completion percentage. This is a guy who was like 50% completion percentage, and he was number 1 through the first 3 weeks, and he's remained consistent. He shot up his draft stock. He became captain. He took accountability. So that's my MVP. And Ethan, when your tenure at Rutgers University is over, you are going to be remembered as one of the greatest Rutgers quarterbacks of all time.
I have Ethan as well because, yes, the stats that you said, all while being sacked the most in the Big Ten at 29 times so far this season. First QB since Gary Nova in 2014 to potentially finish top 3 in passing yards. So far this year, he's 14th in the country in passing yards, second in the Big Ten. And you said big performances. I look at Iowa. 24 for 40, 333 yards, 2 total touchdowns. And this is the same defense that held Dante Moore to 112 yards, Francisco Mendoza 233 yards, and Jordan Mayava just last week to 254 yards. Ethan has shown so far this year he's been the most successful against one of the best defenses in the Big Ten outside of Oregon and Ohio State. And that alone is why I put him at MVP. And so far this year, he's only thrown 1 game less than 20 yards. And that was the Oregon game. Outside of that, it's been at least 220, at most over 350. And we've seen Ethan be able to shine with the 3-headed monster that he's had this season. So start off the year, it was DT Sheffield throughout the first 2-3 games. Throughout games 4 through 7, we saw KJ Duff and that connection get stronger and stronger. And then with the return of Ian Strong as well, Ethan has looked comfortable being able to throw the ball and being able to raise that completion percentage from 53% to 62% is major. Yes, it's a 9% jump, but this is the Big Ten that we're talking about in regards to defenses. And that's very, very, that's a huge leap for a quarterback that was just going into the year. He didn't even look like he had the potential of being drafted. At most, he looked like a 6th to 7th rounder. At best, 6th to 7th rounder. On average, potentially a UDFA. But now he looks like he could go 3rd, 4th round at best. If he finish off the season strong and has a big game potentially against Ohio State, he has a chance of cracking into the a 2nd or 3rd round or possibly a day 2 pick. So far this year, Ethan has been the MVP because even in the losing efforts, he did keep these games close. I look at the Minnesota game, his first game back against the Gophers in Minnesota since leaving Minnesota. So he's had big games so far this year. And yes, 7 interceptions on the year. He's had 2 games where he had multiple interceptions in them. And if he's able to finish off the year strong and just keep it at 7 or 8 interceptions, we can potentially see a 20-plus TD, less than 10 interception season for a Rutgers quarterback, and that's something that Rutgers hasn't seen in over 5-6 years.
Yeah, and those 2 games with 2+ interceptions, one was against Oregon, and the other one we came away with the win by 15 points and scored 35. So even when he's throwing interceptions, it's either, well, I want to say a fluke performance, but to be honest, that's elite competition, and Ethan would be facing nothing but elite competition if he were to make it to the NFL. So I hope that the game against Ohio State is different because that's the other game where he's going to be tested. We've talked about this several times. That's what scouts are going to look at is his game against Oregon. That was rough. His game against Ohio State, can he perform better? Same goes for Ian Strong. Same goes for
KJ Duff. That's the same thing that goes for Raymond. That same thing that goes for a lot of the defense, a lot of that front 7 on that defense, Bradley Reaver, Eric O'Neal, Jet Elad, Cam Miller. This Ohio State game is going to be major because not only is the opportunity for Rutgers to secure a potential bowl bid, as this is going to be their potential chance of getting to 6 wins, it keeps 7-5 alive. And going from a season from last year 7-5 to going out 6-6 is a downgrade at the end of the discussion. It's a downgrade. So they're looking to try to keep a 7-5 season alive and a bowl bid, and that coming off of a year where they were in so many games. You can say shoulda, woulda, coulda about Iowa, shoulda, woulda, coulda about Minnesota, shoulda, woulda, coulda about Washington, because up to the third quarter where Damon Williams just went, Damon Williams looked like potentially the second coming of Lamar Jackson out here.
Yeah.
They were in that game. They were up. They were only down by 3 going into the half. I think the score was 13-10 going into the halftime of that Washington game. So
we were up 10 at one point.
So these 2 games, Ohio State and Penn State, if they're able to, they're looking at an opportunity to win out and finish off the season on a good note with a potential bowl win. Because last year they won 7-5 and lost the bowl game. They're looking to finish off the year with a good note for these seniors. And Ohio State is going to be major. There's going to be a lot of scouts there. This is on the road. This is at the shoe, 100,000 in attendance. I'm looking to see what Ethan can do. I'm looking to see what Eric O'Neill can do, because so far this year, if anybody had the opportunity of going into the draft last year, it was Eric, because currently the only person that was better than him last year is Ravens rookie 2nd round pick Mike Green out of Marshall. So far this year, his numbers have taken a dip. If he's able to go have 2 strong back-to-back games, with Maryland having 5 total tackles, 2 of them being for loss, and go into Ohio State against one of the best teams in the country and be able to make his mark, I know he's looking at this game. Rutgers knows that he's looking at this game. A lot of people in Eric O'Neill's camp knows that this game is major for him to have an opportunity of impressing scouts until the Senior Bowl. Or the Tropical Bowl.
Yeah, you make a lot of great points. 10-point lead against Washington, 14-point lead against Minnesota, 4th quarter lead against Iowa. We go 0-3 in that stretch. We don't get our revenge against Minnesota. Not revenge, but our homecoming win over Minnesota for Ethan. We don't get the revenge game against Illinois. So what do? With Ohio State, the best team in the nation, we look to make a statement. Whether that's in a win or a hard-fought game, you look to make a statement. Penn State, you look to break the 12-game losing streak that we had when James Franklin was their head coach, who, by the way,
Penn State's a winnable game.
Who, by the way, just agreed
very winnable
deal with Virginia Tech. So there goes that ship. Looks like we're all in on Shiano, and I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm just stating the facts. But
you don't think Lane Kiffin wants to come to Piscataway?
I don't think so. I think first off, I think Lane should just stay, but that's neither here nor there. I mean, it's either there or Florida, in my opinion. Those are the 2 places I think that he would go. Is either staying put or going to Florida.
I've seen so many people talk about him going to the NFL, but if he doesn't, if he just stays at Oxford, Ole Miss looks like a team, one of the few teams that are going to actually benefit from the expansion of a 12-team playoffs. We thought that was going to be Penn State. The entire time, it was the Penn State of the SEC and Ole Miss.
Yeah, exactly.
Because Ole Miss has been that team that just hasn't been good enough to beat Alabama or Georgia, but they're good enough to be in the top 10 of the country. So Lane Kiffin has really has a successful foundation right now in Oxford, and coming off of a game against Florida where Florida fans were just chanting for Lane Kiffin to come. He absolutely understands the noise. And one thing about Lane Kiffin, even when it was going up against his daughter's boyfriend earlier in the season against LSU, he's been able to counteract the noise, and that's something I appreciate for him. But back to Rutgers.
Yes, sir.
They have a big challenge against them, and we've seen teams so far this year be able to have that ability of trapping their opponents. Just last week, South Carolina was up 30 at halftime against the number 3 team in the nation, Texas A&M.
Yeah.
Just before that as well, we saw Indiana go into Happy Valley and barely claw out a win against a Penn State team that had a 10-point lead go in the 4th quarter.
It's because their receiver decided to levitate.
Yeah, and just before that as well, we seen Florida take down a Texas team that was favorited by double digits. We saw We saw a Vanderbilt team earlier this year against South Carolina that was top 5 in the nation at that time on the road to take down Lenore Sellers and completely destroy his Heisman hype. We seen Georgia Tech take down Clemson when they were favorited on the road.
I
So
see where you're going
upsets are possible.
Yeah.
That's why Rutgers can look at this game and say that they're in this. They're not so far away from other teams, especially teams in the SEC that have been able to create games and make them interesting. South Carolina did it as well against Alabama at home against Alabama a couple of weeks back as well. So we see that Rutgers has the opportunity of making noise, and I hope that they're able to take full advantage of this opportunity, because for a lot of seniors on this team, this is the make or break of if they're going to get their name called at the draft or if they're going to get called after the draft.
And by the way, any Rutgers players watching this show, if you need some motivation, these Ohio State Buckeye fans on TikTok, they're ruthless, man. I posted a clip from our show last week, and all I did was praise Julian Sayin. And here we go. He is literally in the Heisman conversation, quite literally the favorite after last week. My response, Sayin is not favored over Mendoza. His response, Rutgers will never be good. Enjoy watching from the sidelines.
Just saying. The thing is that Rutgers is better than a lot of other teams in the Big Ten right now. Because, shoot, would you rather be a fan of Rutgers or would you rather be a fan of Wisconsin?
Wisconsin, Penn State, Purdue, Maryland.
Rutgers was expected to have 5 wins on the year so far, and Penn State was looked at as a potential national championship. And so far, the tables have turned.
They were supposed to be 9-1, 10-0, whatever it may be. All right. I say, let's see here. Here's one. The quick slants will haunt your LBs and our tight ends will feast. We will probably just run up the hell out of the ball, truthfully. We don't want to go into the Michigan game too banged up. They're looking at Michigan. Here's another one. Okay, you need to stop putting logic and stats on this. You don't know OSU and your logic is extremely flawed. I think you don't know football that well, honestly. Just buckle up because I guarantee you we will make y'all cry, OHIO. Hey, Rutgers, you guys are being taken as a joke by the number 1 team in the country. Are you going to accept that? Or are you going to go in there and kick the hell out of the Buckeyes and make them realize that we're not a team to be messed with? Or are we going to cave? Now, we're the 31.5-point underdogs. So, unfortunately, I expect the latter from a logical standpoint. But look, man, these guys are too prideful. This is D1 competition. This is Big Ten competition. This is a team in Ohio State that everyone is going to aim for their necks when they're running at them. Guys, we have a chance here. Let's make these guys shut the hell up.
Seeing what Greg Schiano has shown throughout his tenure of being a coach at Rutgers, I know throughout this week, and especially the bye week last week, preparing for this game, he made everybody on that team watch that Oregon game. Because that was the same level of competition that they're going to face this week, or at least the same tier of competition. Because they had the opportunity of doing the unthinkable, of potentially upsetting a team that just came off of a bad loss at home, and they didn't have that, and they didn't take advantage of that opportunity. This week, I know, seeing that they were able to, after what happened against Oregon, a lot of players, especially on that defense, have a bad taste in their mouth from that loss, and I can't see them going into the horseshoe and not being able to give their best effort, especially a lot of them being seniors that are going to be looked at by scouts. I keep on explaining how important this game is for a lot of these players in regards to if they want to keep on furthering their careers in football. Ohio State is the team right now in the country. They're the number 1 team in the country. They have been the number 1 team in the country since week 1. And throughout this college football playoff rankings, it has been them or Indiana. And so far this year, they haven't seen a challenge yet. And this is an opportunity for Rutgers to give Ohio State that challenge and to test Julian Sayin. We haven't seen Julian Sayin really get tested since Texas. And that was in week 1. And that's the primary reason why a lot of voters and just a lot of media heads have been saying Julian Sayin can't win the Heisman, because primarily it hasn't really been him that's been the dominant player on this team. When you think of Ohio State, you think of Jeremiah Smith, you think of Caleb Downs, then you think of Kenyatta Jackson. It's really those big three. And no, my apologies. Arvell Tate, then Kenyatta Jackson. Arvell Tate easily looks like a Buckets Award winner so far this year, and as well as Caleb Down looks like the potential Thorpe Award winner for this year, because those two have been the two best defensive players I've seen so far this season. Entirety of the country. It doesn't matter if SEC, Big Ten, or whatever. Those two have looked insane. So this team, especially for not only the defense, I look at the offensive side as well. If KJ Duff or Ian Strong are able to have a game, let's say 100 yards receiving or multiple on 6 or more catches against an Ohio State defense, that puts a lot of eyes on them. And not only the fact of this game is the opportunity of them to solidify them chance of winning it solidifies them a chance of getting of being bowl eligible, because you don't know about what happens next week against Penn State. You have to take advantage of the games that are ahead of you, and you want to be able to get number 6 before the end of the season, where it's either you win or you're out. So this is a big game for Ohio State, this is a big game for Rutgers just as much as it is for Ohio State. And I hope that Rutgers is able to have that fire. I talked to Mashu Giwa just this weekend because he was able to come out to show a little bit of love to the LIU Sharks. He understands, especially throughout this entire bye week, their mindset has been to take advantage of the opportunity presented to them against Ohio State. And I completely believe that they're going to show all the effort that they should have showed against Oregon, against Ohio State, and potentially shock the world.
Yeah, I mean, and look, in regards to this comment, you'd think for a fan base that, if local, is forced to support the Guardians, the Browns, the Blue Jackets, that they would be a little bit more humble when they have a good team. But no, honestly, in my opinion, this is the cockiest fan base in football. Now, do they have nothing to back it up? Of course not. They have an all-time great team. I mean, this past stretch, like this past year and a half, they've had one of the better rosters and performances.
Yeah. There's an argument for, because I remember talking about this on the radio just last year on the Sports Shark Tank 88.1 FM WCWP, also on Spotify. Last year's Ohio State team, the 2024 Ohio State Buckeyes, outside of the one bad loss against Michigan at the end of the year that led to the big brawl after the game when it comes to flag planting, and basically got flag planting banned from college football, which I think is primarily stupid. If you don't want to get your flag planted on you, don't lose at home. I said, honestly, that roster that Ohio State had last year is on par with 2019 LSU. It's on par. On the offensive end and on the defensive end. Their offense last year had 2 1,000-yard rushers, multiple 1,000-yard receivers. And on the defensive end, they had one of the best defenses in the nation. That's why I was saying easily they were on par with 2019 LSU. And you can see that from how many draft picks that team had just last season.
I mean,
this year is different from last year.
Yeah.
Way different.
I mean, Will Howard's no Joe Burrow. That's the only argument against that.
Doesn't need to be when you have one of the best defenses, and easily we see what Travion Henderson has done when he's been featured in the New England offenses so far this year. He's been the fastest skill player I've seen for New England since Randy Moss, to be completely honest with you. They never had speed on their with their skill players since Randy Moss was in Patriots gear, and we see Travion Henderson, he's fast. Literally, I look at the Bucs game just from 2 weeks ago, where he's in mid-stride looking at Mike Vrabel, asking him, do I get down right now or do I score?
Oh, that, yeah.
Mid-stride.
Yep.
I haven't seen a Patriot player do that in my entire life. So we've seen that. We've seen what Quinshon Judkins has been able to do with Cleveland. So that's why I was able to make that comparison. But this team on offense, especially at least running wise, Ohio State has leaned on their passing attack heavily so far this year. And that's been one of the Achilles heels for Ohio State. They haven't really been able to successfully run the ball this year as compared to last year. And hopefully Rutgers is able to take advantage of how Ohio State is primarily a passing team and being able to just say, you have to beat us by running the ball. Because the difference between this team and between Ohio State and Oregon is that Noah Winningham so far this year has been successful as a running back running the ball for Oregon. Oregon easily has a top 10 offensive line in the country. So I'm looking to see if Rutgers is going to be able to say, Jeremiah Smith can't beat us. Let's see you beat us between the tackles, between the box, and be able to have a lot more protection on the back end for that secondary that we said earlier in the stream that they have been taken advantage of by multiple teams so far this season.
Yeah, I'd rather Bo Jackson and CJ Donaldson beat us than have Julian Sayin beat us. And I guess that wraps up the Ohio State analysis. I believe I said last week that we would lose 45-21. That was before the odds makers came out and said that we would be 31-point underdogs. So they have it a little worse than we did. And I still consider 45-21 a blowout. So I never thought I'd be giving out a kind blowout, but I'm going to say that it's still going to be 45-21, and it's going to be 38-21, 34-21 in the fourth quarter. And it's basically the score at the end isn't going to indicate that we play a good game. I think we will play a good game.
I feel like the score, like you said, if you said 45 points for Ohio State, I think it's going to be like 37. I see 37-24 Ohio State over Rutgers, because I can see that this Rutgers offense should be able to score. I truly believe that the wide receivers have this wide receiver core is the best that Rutgers has had in a while, and I feel like they're going to be able to match up against Ohio State's defense, especially their secondary. KJ Duff, this is a game where KJ Duff might have another breakout game. I don't see him having 241 yards like he did against Purdue, but I can truly see KJ being able to be that reliable safety valve for Ethan, whether it's on plays where they're going to have him on checkdowns, being that last read to stop a lot of the blitzes, because I know Matt Patricia and that Ohio State defense is going to be after Ethan Killikaman, especially with how the offensive lineup has been so far this year, especially at tackles. Their tackles have been very their tackles have not been healthy so far this year. So I can see what Matt Patricia has done so far this year. That Ohio State has been a very high blitzing team, and they like to disguise their blitzes. So seeing that Ethan has been the most sacked QB in the Big Ten so far, they're going to try to up that sack number, and just because of that, I can see that Ohio State is going to say, can your receivers beat us?
Yep.
And I trust Ian Strong in one-on-one matchups, and I truly trust KJ Duff on one-on-one matchups, and that's why I can see KJ having a big game. Because sooner or later, Ethan's going to have an opportunity with KJ Duff one-on-one, and it's going to hurt Ohio State. I don't think it might be a touchdown, or it could be just a large chunk play for 30-plus yards. But that's going to be a play that's going to convince Ohio State to stop running man. And that's going to be the first step for Rutgers to be able to be successful this game. If Ethan is able to get this team to stop running man coverage on them and have to have them go into zone, which can open up the running game for Antoine Raymond, that is the recipe for success for Rutgers.
Yeah, why wouldn't they attack Ethan, who isn't a very mobile quarterback and, like you said, gets sacked a whole bunch? And I agree, but I don't think it's going to be KJ that's the check down guy. We talked about it last week, trying new stuff. We're not going to throw AJ Surratt out there like Adam was saying. But I do think that we're going to be checking down the ball to our speedy, forgotten wide receiver, DT Sheffield. This is going to be his week, I think. He's going to lead the pack in receiving, in my opinion.
Yes, and seeing that this three-headed monster, we were previewing this team earlier this year going into their first game against Ohio, and I think I said on the show that this wide receiving core is built for games against Oregon and built for games against Ohio State, because those are going to be the two games where they're going to get disrespected the most. They're going to say, hey, we want to be able to be pressed up on you. Let's see if you can get open for yourself and be able to release on man coverage. And that's why this game is going to be major. If Ethan is able to have a stellar performance in the passing game, I know he's going to get sacked because Ohio State gets sacks. They've been producing sacks against a bunch of great teams so far this year. They were able to hound a Texas team coming into the year that was supposed to be one of the best teams in the country at preventing sacks. And so far this year, we've seen Arvell Reese being able to have I think he has 9.5 sacks so far this season. So they're going to try to get after Ethan. Ethan isn't a mobile quarterback like you said. So this DT Sheffield is going to have to be that hot route guy and be able to be a guy that wins over the middle, whether it's drag routes or crossers. But I truly believe KJ is going to be that guy that if they're running middle field open, KJ Duff should be able to have an opportunity to be very successful because 6'6" beats a lot of DBs.
Yeah, it's
you can't defend 6'6".
It's why he makes the best catches that I've seen from any Rutgers wide receiver, including Ian Strong this year and receivers in the past. And real quick, this is the last segment, I suppose. Season grades: offense, letter grade; defense, letter grade; overall, letter grade.
For the offense, I think I came into the year seeing what can Ethan do because coming off of last year, he had decency. He showed potential, especially being able to throw the ball, but he wasn't as efficient throwing the ball. He did have a lot of games where he was throwing a lot of incompletions or causing a lot of inexcused turnovers. But he's honestly upped his production, and due to that and just the ability of what Anton Raymond has done in this running game, I have to give them a B+ to an A because we have seen times where, especially in situational football, that they have had a bad turnover or they weren't able to get a first down. We've seen in the fourth quarter of games that this offense has gone stagnant. So that's why I can't give them an A, but easily a B+ just because when they're good, when it's on, it's amazing. Whether it's the game against Purdue or the first half against Iowa or the first half against Washington, or honestly the first half against or the full game just last week against Maryland. When they're good, they're good, but when it's bad, it gets very ugly, like that Oregon game where Ethan couldn't even get over 80 yards passing.
Yeah, I mean, Oregon, the Illinois game to me, and the second half in Washington, the second half in Ohio. But that's why I don't have them at an A or an A+, but I do have them at an A- because of the individual performances have almost universally exceeded expectations, or at the very least been in the ballpark. For defense, though, if you asked me a month ago, I would have said an F or an F-, a G, an H, an I, a J, whatever. I upped it to a D just because we made adjustments against Maryland. We made adjustments against Purdue. And that's what I've been pleading for all year as a Rutgers fan is, can we make adjustments at halftime and come up clutch on defense? And we did that. And, you know, despite the fact that Miami of Ohio and Norfolk State are inferior competition, we still held them to 10 points and 17 points. Ohio had 0 points in the fourth quarter when we had 3 to seal the game. So I'm giving them a D just because there's been glimpses of life. Now, obviously, you thought the defense, well, I'm not saying you in particular, but the average fan would have thought the defense would be the identity this year. And I can't believe I'm using this as a backing, but they were rated higher in CFB 26 than the offense was. So, I mean, everybody thought that the defense would be another.
It's a fair ranking. It's a fair ranking.
Player ranking?
That's a fair ranking.
Oh,
use it CFB. I agree with that.
Yeah. They had the defense higher. So they had it an 82 to our offense being a 79. If you flip it now, our offense is probably an 86 and our defense is like a 72. But I'm still saying it's a D just because there's been those slight glimpses despite the whopping that it's taking at times. I
will say I hope my grading hasn't been extremely generous. I don't want to be the biased guy here so far on the group in regards to covering Rutgers football this season. But the hype that this team had with all the transfers that they brought in, Eric O'Neal, Bradley Weaver being the MAC Defensive Player of the Year last season for Ohio, Eric O'Neal being one of the highest PFF graded edge rushers in the nation just last year, being one of the sack leaders last year. The secondary was supposed to be having Jet Elad, Bo Masco, and in Cam Miller being able to have more ability to be more aggressive due to how well this pass rush was projected to be. We haven't seen that this year, and that's why I gotta give them. I say D minus to be completely honest, and I say D minus. I'm just in your boat of just giving them an F, but over the last couple of years, the last couple of weeks, especially I would say things have shifted past that Oregon game after they got kicked in the mouth
That was
against
rock
Oregon.
bottom.
That's where we seen this defense be able to have some life in it. Yes, they did have a down performance against Illinois on the road, but they've showed that they've been able to fight. We've seen them able to fight against Purdue. We saw this defense play its best so far in the Big Ten against Maryland just 2 weeks ago, and that's why I got to give them a D minus. But they did not live up to the expectations that they had on them, and maybe the expectations was just very high for this team. But seeing what Greg Schiano was looking at in the portal, seeing what these highly touted these pickups in the portal were on the defensive end, especially most of them being on that top 100 watch list for the Tropical Bowl, in regards to being a lot of them being seniors. They did not really produce a lot. And one of those players being LIU Shark Eric O'Neal. Last year, he had over 10 sacks. So far this year, 2.5 sacks. And that's just the differential of talent from playing against Sunbelt and playing against the Big Ten. I knew there was going to be a little bit of a dip, but I didn't expect Eric to not have at least 5 sacks going into week 12 of the season. So that's where I do have to say their edge rushers have not performed well. The front seven, they have been one of the worst defenses against the run. They're 11th right now in the Big Ten in regards to total yards allowed a game. They almost give up almost 400 yards a game, and the only teams that they're better than right now is Wisconsin, Illinois, and Purdue. So you have to be honest in regards to they giving up nearly 28 points a game, and that's just not acceptable for a team that's had so full of upperclassmen transfers. And it hurts to say because I had a lot of faith going into the year, but I'm not going to say that the year is over right now. They still have 2 games left, potentially 3 games if they're able to win one of these 2 to up those numbers and be able to show off what they have left in store for a lot of this Rutgers fan base, because the season's not over for this team yet. I'm not giving up on this defensive unit, and I know they aren't giving up on each other either. So none of the players seem checked out, because if they were going to be checked out, this team would not even be close to winning 6 games after Oregon. That would have been the beginning of the end.
We would have had the Penn State route of winning the first 3 and then losing 9 straight or whatever it is, or 7 straight.
If this team wasn't able to bounce back from Oregon, I don't see them winning a game until Penn State. To be completely honest, I feel like they would have slipped away against Purdue and let that loss beat them a couple of times over. So just because of that, I have to give them a D. I have to give them a D minus. But hopefully they can finish off the year and go up from a D minus to a C plus.
Isn't it funny too that we raved all offseason, all of Rutgers Nation did, about the transfers and Greg Schiano's vision that you could see the vision that he was building. But ultimately, the 2 best players on defense, we both agree, being Bo Masco and you said your DPOY was Daryl Jabome, right?
Jet Elad.
You said it was Jet Elad. Okay, that takes away from my point then. I was going to say the 2
But Daryl Jabome has been very successful as a junior.
Yeah, I was going to say
he's been my DPOY of the front seven. Daryl Jabome has been my DPOY of the front seven.
That's fair. I was going to say that it's funny if the 2 best players on defense were the only 2 starters to remain a Scarlet Knight from last year. But yeah, I mean, that's really it. Real quick, my total letter grade on the year, I would say it's a C. We've been about average based on the projections coming into the year.
I would say we're C. I agree with that, but there's a potential if they're able to win out or possibly split these last 2 games and finish off the season with a bowl win. That's a successful year, especially coming off of from last year, not winning a bowl game. So going from potentially 7-5 and no bowl win to 7-5 with a bowl win, that's a step in the right direction. That's what Rutgers needs going into the offseason, especially with how loaded this transfer portal this season is going to be. If they're able to finish off strong, there's a potential of having a lot of players return.
Bingo. All right, folks. Well, with that being said, myself and Adam will be here post game for Ohio State against our very own Rutgers Scarlet Knights. And then every Monday at 7 o'clock, you know where to find us. Every post game, Donovan's here every Monday, and off season's approaching too, so things are going to get spicy in that transfer portal. If you like the show, like and hit that subscribe button. And until next,
tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend,
and tell that friend. Go Scarlet Knights. See y'all soon.
Go Scarlet Knights.